This podcast is sponsored by Path to Publishing, helping authors to take control over their publishing journey for over 21 years. Visit pathtopublishing.com to get on the path to publishing your next book.
Welcome, everybody, to It's Truly Novel, the podcast where we talk about truly novel things. With me today is Nikki T Anthony. She is the author of The Price We Pay that is due to be released in September. So, Nikki, thank you so much for taking the time to come with me on this journey. I want to know about your book. Tell me about your book.
Well, first, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super honored, super humble. Just to give you guys some insight about me, I'm Nikki T Anthony. I am the author of The Price We Pay. It is a young adult novel that highlights the double-mindedness of how both good and evil can exist within a community and also within an individual. I'm a native of Chicago, but it's also on a city-to-city tour, which is titled Girls Like Me, which brings me here with you guys today.
Oh, so tell me about the tour that you're doing, Girls Like Me. What is that all about?
Yeah, sure. So the Girls Like Me tour is pretty much a city-to-city tour, also coincides with a virtual tour. It's pretty much myself going to city-to-city discussing me and Zanette here, meeting different women, different young adults who are like-minded individuals. I share a lot about my childhood, my teenage, my adolescent, coming to age of how I struggled as a teen, how I struggled in poverty. I just realized that there's so many young adults, young girls out there that are like me to this day. There's so many young girls who are struggling with those same things. Nothing's changed but the timing. You know what I mean? I really want to get out there city to city, see, hear, touch, and get to know the readers, get to know different young ladies, different women. I like to call it a crying tour because it's going to be full of emotion, full of just loving on each other, something that we don't get a lot of as women, especially in the minority community. It's like a stigma that we don't support each other, that we aren't emotionally there for each other. So I want to kind of change that narrative. That's what the Girls Like Me tour is.
Very nice. So you kind of want to reach back to the generation behind you and let them know that it's okay to support one another, that supporting one another doesn't mean that you're going to lose out. It is in supporting one another that you will get ahead.
Absolutely. It doesn't mean that we're in a competition. It doesn't mean that we have to compete. It doesn't mean that because you aren't in one particular space or place at that time in your life that what you're doing isn't equivalent to what the woman or the girl next to you is doing. It doesn't mean that you're behind. It just means that you're in your own race at your own pace. And it's okay. It's totally okay. It's room enough for everyone.
I like that message a lot. And I do think it's one that more people need to hear.
Absolutely. We can get so far doing it together. You get further along the road if you do it with someone. I told someone recently, if you want to go fast, do it alone. If you want to go far, take someone along with you.
That's an African proverb. It's very wise because it is faster to go by yourself, but there's always going to be a point where you can't move forward on your own. You're going to reach a wall. And at that point in time, your ability to move forward depends on how good you are at convincing other people that helping you to get over the wall is in their best interest.
Yes, I agree. 200%. I agree.
Which comes down to communication. And that brings us back to your book, The Price We Pay. You gave me the privilege of being able to read an early version. And I noticed one of the things that doesn't happen is communication. Characters don't talk to one another. The parents aren't talking to each other. They might be fighting, but they're not really communicating. Zanetta doesn't really communicate either. She's in fact convinced that communication won't help her, that nobody's going to listen. Was that the dominant feeling that you had at that age? Was that it didn't matter if you talked or not, nobody was going to hear you?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Definitely for sure. I don't know if it's because being conditioned, as I mentioned, I know even during my editing process, I believe one of my 25 editors, and I'm just,
I'm like that.
It was so many people who touched her. But one of the editors had even mentioned, I think that after all of the happenings and all of the events that took place, that Zanetta, there needs to be some type of incision in there where she speaks to someone, where she talks to someone. I wanted this to be as realistic as possible, a real life turn of events, because to be frank, especially in minority communities, we don't have that outlet, right? So we don't always have the resources. We don't always have the support. I grew up in the projects in Chicago, a really rough project. It was one of those places where on a daily we would hear gunshots and maybe look out the window or go downstairs, and then there's someone lying there in a pool of blood. And that was the norm for us. And the next day we were expected to go to school. Everybody talked about it, but it was like, oh, XYZ or so and so was slain last night. But here's the lesson for today. You know what I mean? It was like no stopping point. It was no processing what we were witnessing. So that's where that aspect of the character not speaking much, not communicating much, not feeling supported, because that was definitely the way that I had grown up. And it was kind of one of those things when you saw things like that or you witnessed things like that, it was like, you hear nothing, you see nothing because of the environment you're in. You know, it was normalized, and we had honestly conditioned ourselves to think that was normal, and it's not.
When you grow up in an abusive background,
Yep.
you normalize being abused. You normalize being traumatized. It's what you expect. And even if you leave the environment, you will sometimes recreate the very trauma that you grew up in, because that's what feels normal.
That's what feels normal. It feels normal. It's like trauma bonding. It feels normal. Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. How old were you when you left?
Wow. When we moved from there, I believe I was 18. I was 18, but by that time, they were actually tearing that place down. Honestly, it's scary to think about, because I always think, because my grandmother didn't have much money. She was on a fixed income. And I always think about, like, hey, I wonder if they didn't tear them down, or they didn't make the decision to say, you know what, these need to be demolished, would we still be there? 9 times out of 10, yeah, we would have still been there. It's a scary thought to even think, where would I have gone? Where would I be at this point in my life? What trajectory or what path would my life have taken? I was about 18 when we left there. But like a lot of other people, unfortunately, I think that it's a psychological thing. I think it's a mindset thing. Just to be honest, a lot of people who left there didn't really leave there.
Just because you leave a traumatic situation doesn't mean your mind has left it behind. Until you process that, until you have some kind of help moving through the trauma you grew up with, it will stay with you.
Absolutely. It does. It houses a place. It stores a place. It stores a place in your mind. And it's there. It's embedded in you, especially if it was a big part of your life. It's a part of you one way or another. So some of those characteristics will be drawn out at some point. The past isn't the past. We sweep it under the rug and we try to forget about it and move forward, but it's always a part of you in some way or form.
That explains something, a dynamic that I did notice, which your editor also mentioned, was the almost casual way that it's handled when a teenager dies very early in the book. Just for those who need a spoiler alert, there is a death early on. And for those of us who didn't grow up where death was that everyday situation, that's jarring. It's like, why isn't this a bigger deal? But that is part of the conversation that I think people need to have, because for some kids, it is a reality that death is an everyday event. Their lives are being bombarded with this, and they have no out. They have no option to call a halt to it and say, wait a minute, this is craziness.
This is too much. Pause. No, let's time out. There is no time out.
And, there are a variety of factors that contribute to that kind of environment being created. But I think some part of it is that our culture isn't having that conversation. We're not talking about it. The media will talk about rare things, deaths that affect other areas, but they're not going to talk about it unless it's really crazy off the charts what happened. But the fact that people have been dying every day, that doesn't
Yeah.
even make the headline.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's
And
just another day. It's a
Right.
normal day, unfortunately. It's a normal day. And it's a day where you expect it to keep going. It's definitely a marginalized topic. Kids who don't come from that background or come from that environment, or they're more fortunate to not have to experience that environment, they don't quite understand. I think that that's what makes the book unique, is the fact that it is a conversation starter. It will allow individuals from all walks of life to be able to say, hey, I see this point of view. I never knew that this was life for some people. It kind of helps you to better understand why people are the way they are, or why they respond the way they do, or why they don't respond the way you think they should respond.
that was brought up during
Yeah,
the editing process, right? As you
absolutely.
have many
Yeah.
people looking at the book who are
Mhm.
bringing their own life experiences to it. And for those who haven't grown up the way you did, that feels
Mhm.
very unrealistic. How can this
Yeah.
death of
Yeah.
somebody so young just be glossed over like it's another Tuesday?
Yeah, for sure.
But when that is your reality, it is just another Tuesday.
It's just another Tuesday. It's another Tuesday.
It's just another kid getting popped, another death to add to the body count, and you kind of become numb to the whole situation.
You do. You do. You do. You normalize it. I don't know if you remember Ice Cube's "Today Was a Good Day." It's a good day if you don't hear gunshots, if you don't see anyone get killed or hear anyone being murdered. It's a good day. It's a very good day.
I think we need to address why are
Absolutely.
we having these situations where kids are growing up in these high crime areas where death is so prevalent. Now,
Right.
this leads me to a question. Growing up in this environment, how did that impact your thoughts about what your life expectancy should be? Did you think about the future?
I did think about the future. I thought about the future a lot, but I also had individuals who were in my life at that time. My grandmother was super supportive. She always told me that I could do anything, I could be anything. She was my biggest encourager. But I also had adults in my life at that time who would tell me why. At one point, I dropped out of school, but I went to get a GED. After I got the GED, I went to college. I started community college, and I just kept going. And one particular adult in my life said to me, I don't know what you're doing that for. You're never going to be anything. You're never going to go anywhere. You're never going to be anything. To this day, me and this adult have a really strange relationship. It's a really close adult in my life. Honestly, at one point, it was said to me so much where I started to believe that I wasn't going to be anything. But it was up to me to say, you know what? To heck with that. I'm going to be something. I have dreams. I have aspirations. I have to keep going. So it was definitely points in my life where I felt as if I was not supported. I wasn't taken serious. But for me, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew where I wanted to go. And I just kept pushing myself. I kept furthering myself. I kept furthering my education. And I just kept going. I kept encouraging myself. To this day, I'm still the same way. I'm a full-fledged adult, right? And this same adult, I get no support from, and no sense of acknowledgement that I turned out to be more than you spoke upon me. I definitely had dreams despite being discouraged. That's what I want to stress to young girls. No matter what anyone tells you or says to you what you can't do, if you have it in here, you can do it. So
My curiosity came from listening to somebody else's interview about growing up surrounded by death like that. And their comment was, think about the future. I thought I'd be lucky to make 21. That's as far as my future thinking went, because I didn't see anybody around me really living much past that.
Yeah. I knew for me, I had a long life expectancy, but I have had other individuals around me I believe I call him my husband because he was my husband, but we're really close now. My husband made that comment before, and he said that he didn't expect to live past 21. It's crazy because I've heard a lot of male figures say, I didn't expect to live past 21. I never thought I would see the age of 18. And it comes from the impact of the environment that we surround ourselves with. I never really heard females say it, but for myself, the environment didn't impact my life expectancy. But I do know of a couple of individuals who they do have that feeling. They're shocked that they made it to 30 and 35. It's sad. Just imagine times have changed a great deal, especially here in Chicago with all of the gun violence and the shenanigans that happens every single day here. Just imagine if we felt that way, or people of my era generation felt that way 20 years ago. Imagine how they feel now. A lot of them aren't even making it to 15, 16. The times have changed, but have they really changed? Have they worsened?
That's definitely a good question. And I know that part of the reason that you wrote the book is to address the factors that go into creating an environment where death is normalized and violence against kids is something that it's just another day on the street. I know that the book, and I hate to give away too much of it, but the book's opening does start with a Korean grocer becoming scared and pulling the trigger. Wrongly, but you can, from a certain perspective, understand why somebody might pull the trigger, so to speak. That's a common shopkeeper versus kids in the neighborhood. Was that common for you?
Absolutely. It was definitely common for me. Actually, I got that idea from historical facts intertwined with fiction. I remember years ago, many moons ago, a young lady said to me when we were working, "You are like the coolest Black girl I have ever encountered." She said, "You're so humble, you're so sweet, and you're nothing like I was raised to think you all were." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "My parents raised me to be afraid of Black people. I was raised that you all were dangerous. I was raised that I should be afraid of you all. I should fear you all." It really took me aback. It shocked me to hear someone actually say things of that nature. It was really shocking for me. I said, wow. I said, that's so insane, because growing up, although it was a predominantly African American neighborhood, we would have other racial communities in the neighborhood, like Arab. There were some Caucasian, like store owners. And when we were going to the stores, they would always watch us, or they would follow us around to see if we were stealing. It was kind of, and I think I mentioned something in the book to this nature. We would always say, "You all are in our neighborhoods, but you don't trust us." But it's like a twofold thing. You feel like they're in your neighborhood, but they don't trust you. But they're also in your neighborhood and they're afraid of you. But why are they afraid of you? So a lot of things it's like learned behavior. So that's where that came from.
So tell me when you're planning on releasing The Price We Pay.
The Price We Pay is available for pre-order on Amazon, and it's also available for pre-order to the website, www.iamnikkitанthony.com. But it officially releases on September the 12th. So that's the official release date.
That is an exciting thing. You are only, 8 weeks away now?
Yeah. Oh my
gosh.
Oh my goodness.
And so what exactly are your plans? Are you going to have a virtual launch party, or is it going to be a physical, or a combination?
I'm going to do a combination, kind of like a hybrid. We were still trying to kind of figure out, do we want to go with the middle of the month or the end of the month? Just want to make sure it's perfect and make sure that everyone's able to be there. We get so many people like inquiring about it or whatnot, and we just want to make sure that we're fair to everyone. So in some instances, you can't please everybody, but you do try to keep close to it, right? So out of fairness, we said, well, we're going to do both virtual and in person. And we're also looking at streaming the in-person as well, just so that everybody kind of gets like their fair share of peek into it and everything of that nature. So we're definitely looking for like more of a hybrid, virtual, in-person type of thing. So we'll have more details definitely on the website, NikkiTAnthony.com. I am NikkiTAnthony.com. We'll have more details on the launch, the sale, the ticket sale. Definitely by the end of the month, everything will be squared away, ready to go. Because like you said, we 8 weeks away.
So
no turning back. So yeah.
yeah, that's great. And so what are your next steps? What are the plans you have once the book is launched? Are you working on a new book or what's going on?
Well, I am definitely working on a new book. I will say, because I have had a couple individuals who've had the pleasure of receiving an advanced review copy ask me, well, is it going to be like a part two? And I will say this. The Price We Pay was written in a way where if I never, ever, ever wrote another book again, this would go down as a classic, right? And then if I chose to write another book again, I could say, okay, let's kind of throw like a part two in there. So it could, with The Price We Pay, it could go either way. So will I say it's going to be a part 2 or 3? I don't know. Either way, readers will be satisfied. It's not like a cliffhanger. I do think that it gives closure to the intended message that's conveyed, but I'm definitely working on another book. So those are my plans.
Very nice. Have you submitted this, or are you planning to turn it into a movie at some point?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely think that The Price We Pay is box office worthy for sure. Not just the message, I think it's necessary, I think it's needed. A lot of the things that we've experienced like over the last couple of years, and not to give it away or anything, but a lot of minority communities experience a lot of unfair policing, a lot of wrongfully convicted, a lot of wrongfully incarcerated, a lot of real world issues like that need to come to life, that needs to come from the pages to the big screen. I think that The Price We Pay is definitely box office worthy. So I do have plans.
Are you going to be the one who writes the screenplay?
Hey, you never know. You never know. I'm up for the challenge. I'm always up for like something new to learn, some more to do, like everyone around me, like is always like, oh, here she goes. She has this like big bright idea to do something else. I'm always up to the challenge. So yeah, for sure.
And do you have other books that are out there already written, or is this your first book?
This is my first book. This will be the debut. This is the first book for Nikki T Anthony.
And it's geared toward young adults, but it really can work for any age group, I think.
Although it's geared towards young adults, it could definitely fit the profile. It could definitely be relatable to anyone of all ages, because not just young adults experiences a lot of the life-turning events that are happening. They aren't the only ones that are experiencing this. It's happening to young adults the most because that's what's being televised by the media. But a lot of things that take place in the book is told from the perspective of a 15-year-old teenager, but you have Zanetta's mom, Odessa, her dad, Herschel. A lot of the characters have really page-turning real-life events that's so relatable. So it honestly be universal for anyone, honestly.
Yeah. I think that in communities where this is common, teachers could probably, 6th grade or older, in communities where this isn't common, that they might want to hold off until 9th grade or older. You do need to, as a teacher, kind of gauge your audience's ability to handle tougher content and their exposure level. But it might actually be something that teachers could use to get parents involved in these discussions. Let's talk about the issues. Let's discuss how teachers may play roles in these things. Zanetta definitely has her confrontations with the educational system. Police might want to use this with juvenile detention kids. Let's talk about how you got here and how you view the police and what we can do to improve so that we can not have these situations be so tense between police and the people they're trying to serve.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
Are we looking at who we choose to police areas? Are we being careful about that? Are we making sure that the attitudes, I will say for police, it's very, very difficult to maintain a positive outlook when every day is a beatdown of negativity. It's very difficult to come with the assumption that the person is innocent, and yet that is the assumption we must work with. It is not right to push on these kids the burden of all the baggage they're carrying from past cases, and to assume they're guilty because of where they live, because of their poverty, because of the factors that they had no control over. And to understand that kids who have been abused by authority aren't going to automatically give you respect. You're going to have to earn it. You're going to have to prove you're trustworthy. It's not fair to step into these kids' lives from the outside and all of a sudden expect them to jump, because they're not going to.
Yes, I agree. Yes.
And I think that's part of the problem too. It's part of the problem in our society that we don't give kids room to be traumatized and to react like a traumatized kid.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. We don't support them enough, right?
Traumatized kids don't trust adults. They're not going to give you automatic authority.
Yes.
You're going to have to earn your way in, and we need to approach them with that understanding that these kids are traumatized, and not to further their trauma by how we handle them. Because I feel like that's basically what we do. We take these kids who are growing up in these traumatic environments where they're exposed to things that are way beyond their years through no fault of their own. And then we expect them to behave in a manner that is consistent with a kid who's not traumatized. Well, I'm sorry, that's not realistic. That's not what's going to happen.
Yes.
If every day was a fight for survival, you'd be prepared to fight everybody who came along. And that's what these kids are facing. Every day is a fight for survival. They're prepared to fight everybody. But if you earn your way into their hearts, if you prove to them that you are working for their best interests, and that is what you care most about, you will have them eating from your hand. You will not have to rule over them with an iron fist. The velvet glove works just fine.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, for sure. I agree.
You have to earn it. I'm not saying, but you have to earn it.
You have to.
And I think too many times adults expect respect because they were taught to respect all adults, but they are also coming from a different environment. Kids are. When you've been abused by the authority, you don't trust authority. And when every authority person you know is somebody who has hurt you, you're not going to automatically give them your trust. And that's not a black and white thing. That is a human nature
thing.
It's
a human thing. It's a universal thing. You know, like just like the saying is, age is not equivalent to maturity. That goes the same for children versus adults, or teens versus adults. Your age is not equivalent to you saying whatever you deem fit because you're the elder. Or, you saying whatever you deem fit because, you have more wisdom, or like, that's just not how it goes, right? And even like you mentioned in the schools and with the police, even a couple weeks ago, I spoke with a pastor. And one of my biggest questions to him was, why do you think the youth is leaving the church? So it even applies to like religion. Like, why is it that like they're leaving the church because they see religion as a bunch of rules, and that goes fold and fold with adults and children. Like, they see adults as the rulers of the iron fist, and they don't see them as someone who can have a supportive conversation. They see it as one-sided. They don't have that trust factor there to say, you know what, I feel like this is a safe space. I feel like this is a supportive space. And although this individual is an adult, I can have an open dialogue with this individual without being judged, without being told, you don't have a right to feel this way. This is how you're not intended to feel this way because you're a kid. Kids experience just as much equally stressful lives as adults do. Like, they're going through just as much as we are. I remember like growing up, I would always hear like adults that were in my life when they would say, what problems do you have? You're a kid. You don't have problems. You don't have bills. It's not about bills. It's not about finances. It's not about responsibilities. Teens have a lot of problems. Youth have a lot of problems. They struggle with a lot. I struggle with a lot. I struggle with depression. I struggle with anxiety. I struggle with myself. I was fighting myself. I had my own demons. So just because I didn't pay bills or have like a big responsibility or monthly responsibilities or itemized responsibility, it did not mean that my feelings were not valid. I think that that's where the disconnect comes in with young adults and actual adults. Their feelings aren't being validated.
And I think there's a tendency for adults to be dismissive of children's feelings because they
Yes.
think that their children's problems are not as serious as they are. And they forget
Yes.
that for that
Yes.
child, that is the biggest problem they've ever faced
the
in their life. And it makes a big difference when an adult steps in and says, I know you're feeling this way. For you, this is the most serious thing going on. And I'm here to
Yes.
help you. I'm
Yes.
here to listen. I take you seriously. I
Yeah.
believe you. That makes a big difference in forming those trust relationships, would then allow you to lead them in the direction of being able to process and to heal. And so it doesn't become this big explosive issue.
Which we see in the book. You know, like we see that between Zanetta and her dad. Like we see that that explosion take place because her dad is one of the character that rules with an iron fist, and she is the one of the she's complied for as long as she could take, but at some point she does explode because she feels like, hey, you're not validating my feelings. Like, just because you're the adult,
Right.
you're the parent, I have feelings. So we see that take place in the book. So
right.
yeah.
I think that your book makes a very poignant case for why we need to alter not just the way we talk between races, but the way adults talk to children, the way we handle things in communities when things go wrong. Early in the book, there's the death and she's taken to the police station, but nothing's explained to her. The process isn't explained. It's just she's taken through it and she's in the meat grinder. That's a very scary situation to be in the hot seat, trying to answer questions and remember details, and you're trying to process your own trauma at the same time.
And then you're expected to go home and sit at the dinner table and talk about
Like
how nothing took place, nothing ever happened. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I will say some people will love the book. I think some people will find it too much and unbelievable, but I encourage those who find it unbelievable to find somebody who lived through something like that and ask them how believable it is, and have that conversation with somebody who didn't live the life you did. Because I guarantee you it's going to be eye-opening to you that for some people, this is their reality. And then that can lead us to a different conversation, which is, okay, that's some people's reality. Now, how do we work together to make sure that stops being anybody's reality?
Absolutely.
Goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Let's work together to find a solution that we can implement so more generations of our kids don't have to grow up in that environment. I would like for this to become completely unbelievable in 3 generations.
Yes.
So that 2 generations from now, I would like for a kid to pick up that book and go, wow, that's never going to happen. That's so unrealistic.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I would totally love it more than for that to be a thing of the past tense. But then again, we live in a realistic world.
If we don't have these conversations, it's never going to be possible.
Yes, if we don't have these conversations, and if the individual that we're having the conversations with, the recipient is not receiving, if it doesn't receive in their heart, then we kind of go nowhere. We have to find a way to move the needle. So if we can find a way to move the needle, which with the price we pay, I think we have. We just have to have individuals who are receiving enough to say, let's meet in the middle.
We talk to somebody who hasn't lived the life that I've lived. Let's get together. Let's talk about it over coffee. Tell me about your experience. How much does this match up with what this girl is experiencing? And that's where we can start that conversation. You read the book, they read the book, you come together, you talk about it. How did this strike you? What in your life was like this? What in your life was different from this? Did you feel this? And then we find that middle ground And we begin to have the ability to build those bridges that form relationships and connections that then allow us to cooperate together. Instead of talking at each other, we can talk to each other, which is a whole lot more productive. Let's just open the door. And that's what we're striving to do with The Price We Pay. And Nikki, it has been such a pleasure getting to know you better. I am so excited about helping you get this book out there. Excited about this opportunity to really step into things and to show people that there is a better way. We do not have to have the violence. We do not have to have the riots. We do not have to have all of that. We can have conversations that make a difference.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much. And you have a wonderful day.